God is good to us. He always is good to us. And He always gives us more than we deserve. And He's blessed our school in a mighty way. I told you last time that 83,000 people accept Christ worldwide every day. 35,000 of those are in Africa. 25,000 are in Asia. Some believe that just in China alone, there could be about 100,000 a day. And then 17,000 of those 83,000 that accept Christ every day around the globe are in Latin America. The sad part is that 6,000 of those that accept Christ daily are in Western Europe and the U.S. combined. So there's a great challenge. And the reason why I mentioned that today is because our school here in San Antonio is touching China, Africa, and obviously Latin America. We have the first students that came from Hongkong, China this semester, and then we have one from Africa, and obviously a lot from Latin America. 85% of our student body is Hispanic, and demographers were shocked to hear the recent statistics. I think it was last week. They were even shocked. Their predictions were not even close. It surpassed what they had anticipated about the Hispanic community. For the first time, the University of Texas, their freshman class, the majority was not Anglo for the first time in its history. So it's growing. The Hispanic population is expected to grow nationwide from 40 million to almost 140 million. And this school is touching that group that is going to touch the state, is going to touch the nation and the world. And we thank you for the opportunity to be able to share one of our students with you and to share a little bit about what God is doing. The school is becoming more strategic every day in the life of our nation. And so we covet your prayers and your support. I want to thank you, Pastor, for inviting me and also the church. It is always a joy to be here. Obviously, you have someone here that I treasure. And I thank God for the opportunity. I stay busy going around the state and the nation, making people aware of what's going on and the challenges that we're facing as a nation. But I enjoyed it the last time when I was here, and I was looking forward to this time again. What do you do when God's opportunity knocks? There's never been a time when God has not spoken. He's always challenging us. He's always trying to get our attention. He did it with Noah when he wanted to build the ark. He did it with Abraham. Abraham was the first person he called when he wanted to reach the world. He called him to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. He called Moses when he wanted to deliver his people. And then in the New Testament we see different ways that God approaches and knocks to call people to accomplish his purposes. The sermon this morning is found in the first book of Samuel, chapter 14, the first 14 verses. I'm not going to read those verses, but I am going to make reference to some of those verses. What we find here is that Saul, at this moment in his life, was the king over Israel. And Saul had all the political power necessary to go to war against the Philistines. He had the military power. He had the spiritual power. He had the authority to go to war against the Philistines. But instead of acting on what he knew God wanted for his life, instead of doing God's will in his life, he chose not to be obedient. And one of the reasons he did not attack the Philistines is because from his perspective, from his human perspective, success was impossible. And so he waited. And in the middle of the night, his son, Jonathan, gets up without telling anyone. And this is usually the way the servants of the Lord act when they know that God is calling them to a particular task. And the only person he wakes up is the person he had authority over, the servant. And he wakes him up, and then he goes to war. So what we find in this moment are two individuals, two people who didn't have the same resources, because Jonathan didn't have the authority politically, spiritually, in a sense, because God had given the king that authority over the nation. Military power, obviously, he didn't have. But what they did have in common, it was that they both had the same opportunity to seize the divine moment. One of them missed it, and the other one took advantage, believing that God was with him. Now let me ask you a question. How many of us have looked at other people and thought to ourselves, why is it that God always blesses them? Do you know someone like that? That it really doesn't matter what they do, they succeed. No matter what they do, God seems to always be with them. You know, in the Bible, we discover there are people who seem to step into God's activity, God's opportunities, who experience the power of God in such a way that their lives can only be described as miraculous. They have the exact same kind of moments that we have, but they engage, they participate in those moments differently. And here we have Jonathan. And I want to share a few characteristics that I see in Jonathan, a few dynamics in his life that allowed him to take advantage of that opportunity that God was giving him. You know, it's interesting